lies asleep in the snow-capped peaks of the Tetons and Yellowstone. She sings to me of sad memories of days when the buffalo roamed. No white-faced cow is grazing now on the plain where the longhorn trod, and a red-skinned man has a calloused hand from turning Oklahoma sod. And now I love to gaze at the color change in her hills of Tennessee, or to smell the rain on her sun-baked plains with a good horse between my knees. There's the ghostly strain of a wagon train. The desert takes its toll. The life she gave was the price she paid for the walls of the Alamo. Steel rails roll toward her western coast. She's moving her people on. Now the buildings high dot her sunset skies. The moving keeps her people strong. And now I love to gaze at the color change in her hills of Tennessee, or to smell the rain on her sun-baked plains with a good horse between my knees. I hear the deadly sound of a cannon round. She sets her people free, where brave men died to protect her rights, make a home for you and me. Yes, brave men make America great. Just look what they have done. I'm proud to say that the Lord has made me one of America's sons. And now I love to gaze at the color change in her hills of Tennessee, or to smell the rain on her sun-baked plains with a good horse between my knees. The sweet smell of rain on her sun-baked plains with a good horse between my knees. A jolly group of cowboys discussing friends at ease said, "One, I'll tell you something, boys, if you will listen, please. I'm an old cowpuncher, and here I'm dressed in rags. I used to be a tough one and go on great big jags. Know I've got a home, boys, a good one, you all know, although I haven't seen it since long, long ago. I'm going back to Dixie once more to see them all. I'm going to see my mother when the work's all done this fall. When I left my home, boys, my mother for me cried. She begged me not to go, boys, for me she would have died. My mother's heart is aching, aching for me, that's all. And with God's help I see her when the work's all done this fall. That cowboy went out to stand his guard. The night was dark and cloudy and storming very hard. The cattle herd got frightened and rushed in wild stampede. The cowboy tried to head them while riding at full speed. His saddle horse did stumble, and on him he did fall. Now the boy won't see his mother when the work's all done this fall. Sam, you take my saddle, Bill, you take my bed, Pete, you take my pistol after I'm dead. I'm going to a new home, a better one, that's all. But I won't see my mother when the work's all done this fall. Charlie was buried at sunrise, no tombstone at his head. Nothing but a little slab, and this is what it said. Charlie died at daybreak, his death was from a fall. Now the boy won't see his mother when the work's all done this fall. My grandparents came here from Yale, Arkansas, built them Versatility on the Sulphur Springs draw. They scratched out a living for a family of 10, with a faith that was strong as the panhandle wind. All those tall Texas tales Grandpa passed down to me are still just as vivid as when I sat on his knee. But what I remember about the tales he would spin is how he would cuss that blame panhandle wind. It taught the coyote to howl, makes the tumbleweeds roll. It controlled the migration of the great buffalo, makes the salt cedar sing and the cottonwood bend. Your constant companion is the panhandle wind. It sweeps off the Rockies like a fast-moving train, brings a sky full of dust and a few drops of rain. It usually blows from the north, but it's subject to change as it sculpts the face of the panhandle plain. It just took my hat off and blowed it a mile. I broke out a cussing, then I managed to smile. I'd rather be here than any place I have been, but I'll never get used to this panhandle wind. It taught the coyote to howl, makes the tumbleweeds roll. It controlled the migration of the great buffalo, makes the salt cedar sing and the cottonwood bend. Your constant companion is the panhandle wind. You never get used to this panhandle wind.
Julie Sykes had one goal too, an Elgin watch and a porter's suit. He hustled back for 50 years and worked the railroad line. From overalls and cotton fields, spit shine shoes and rumbling steel, his life was made to roll on rails that suited Muley fine. His old pap never got so far as 20 miles from a sharecrop farm, while Muley, he's seen shooting stars from Denver up to Maine. He loved the gentle roll and sway, the sound a lonesome whistle made. He knew his calling from the day that he first saw a train. Muley was a railroad man from Portland to Miami Sand. He knew that in this great big land there's nothing like a train. Tell the children stories how the rails were laid by hand. They knew his name from coast to coast. Muley was a railroad man. Muley was a railroad man. Spend his off days at the yard. I knew each engine there by heart. They could have taken one apart, but they never let him try. Said we all have a gift to use. Some drive a train, some shine the shoes. The engineer may get folks there, but me, I make 'em smile. He always spoke about the time Woodrow Wilson rode the line and tipped him $20 gold he carried till he died. But he praised the Lord when someone laid a quarter in his hand. God put him here to ride the trains. Muley was a railroad man. Muley was a railroad man. Muley spent his golden years explaining throttles, wheels, and gears. Caretaker for the train museum at the Dallas County Fair. He'd tell you how the whistles blew, the engine roared, and the cinders flew. When he got to heaven, he just knew they'd still be running there. Lived to be 104, died in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Laid to rest in his porter's cap, a double eagle for his fare. When I step off heaven's train, he'll have my bags in hand. With a smile and a yes sir right on time. Muley was a railroad man. Muley was a railroad man. Muley was a railroad man. Muley was a railroad man.
Back about 1825, I left Tennessee very much alive. Never would have made it through the Arkansas mud if I hadn't have been a-riding on the Tennessee stud. Got into trouble with my sweetheart's pa, but one of her brothers was a bad outlaw. Sent her a note by my Uncle Fudd, and I rode away on the Tennessee stud. Tennessee stud was long and lean, the color of the sun, and his eyes are green. He had the nerve and he had the blood, and there never was a horse like the Tennessee stud. I drifted on into no man's land, across the river called the Rio Grande. Raced my horse with a Spaniard's bow till I filled me a skin full of silver and gold. Then me and a gambler, we couldn't agree. We got in a fight over Tennessee. We jerked our guns, he fell with a thud, and I rode away on the Tennessee stud. The Tennessee stud was long and lean, the color of the sun, and his eyes are green. He had the nerve and he had the blood, and there never was a horse like the Tennessee stud. I got as lonesome as a man can be, dreaming of my baby back in Tennessee. Tennessee stud's green eyes turned blue as he was a-dreaming of his sweetheart too. We loped on across Arkansas. I whooped her brother and I whooped her pa. I found that girl with the golden hair, and she was riding on the Tennessee mare. The Tennessee stud was long and lean, the color of the sun, and his eyes are green. He had the nerve and he had the blood, and there never was a horse like the Tennessee stud. Stirrup to stirrup and side by side, we crossed the mountains and the valleys wide. We
Came to Big Muddy and we forded the flood on the Tennessee mare and the Tennessee stud. Little baby playing on the cabin floor and a little horse colt playing round the door. And I love the girl with the golden hair and the Tennessee stud loves a Tennessee mare. The Tennessee stud was long and lean, the color of the sun and his eyes are green. He had the nerve and he had the blood, and there never was a horse like the Tennessee stud. Never was a horse like a Tennessee stud. Back about 1825, I left Tennessee very much alive. Never would have made it through the Arkansas mud if I hadn't have been a-riding on the Tennessee stud. Got into trouble with my sweetheart's pa, but one of her brothers was a bad outlaw. Sent her a note by my Uncle Fudd, and I rode away on the Tennessee stud. The Tennessee stud was long and lean, the color of the sun and his eyes are green. He had the nerve and he had the blood, and there never was a horse like the Tennessee stud.